I'm Hastings Reid. I'm the Deputy Director of the Division of Air Resource Management with the Florida Department of Environmental Protection. And we are in charge of managing Florida's air resources. And the folks in this room have a big role to play in managing Florida's air resources. So I'm really happy to be here, meet some people, a lot of familiar faces also. It's been I've been with the department for about 10 years, and I've had a lot of opportunity to work with our partners in the Florida Forest Service. I like to think that we have a great relationship with the Florida Forest Service, and that relationship is really going to be even more important as we embark in trying to implement EPA's new particulate matter NACs. So just recently, the last month or so, EPA promulgated a new national ambient air quality standard that is a health-based standard for the amount of particulate matter that can be given over a specific period of time. EPA lowered the NACs, so it used to be 12 micrograms per meter cubed here, and that's on an annual average. So basically, we're out here. We have a team of people that monitor air quality throughout the state. This is our PM monitoring network. So in each of these locations, there is a ambient air quality monitor, and this is all for PM 2.5. We have local programs that run in our biggest counties: West Palm, Broward, Palm Beach, Hillsborough, Pinellas, Sarasota, Orange, and Duval. The Florida Department of Environmental Protection is responsible for all of the other sites that you see around here. And so EPA lowered the NACs from 12 significantly down to 9 micrograms per meter cubed. And so right off the bat, you see a couple of places where we are close or over 9 micrograms per meter cubed. Importantly, that is Broward County and Pensacola monitor up there. So we have 2 locations. We also have a couple of other locations that are above 8 in Jacksonville, Tampa, Polk County. And a lot of these are being impacted by smoke from prescribed fire. So they're also being impacted by, Canadian wildfire events, Saharan dust events. So there's a lot of things that go into the soup that causes PM 2.5. But especially in areas around the state where we don't have a lot of heavy industry, and Florida is not a very industry-heavy state, what we are seeing is kind of persistent impacts, especially in this time of year, from smoke. And so I'm going to talk about how that impacts what we're doing and how that may impact what you're doing. So EPA really, really values prescribed burning. They think that it is very, very, very important. But they also care about public health. And they think that, having high concentrations of smoke and particulate matter is bad for public health. So how do you balance those things? And so what we do and what we are preparing to do is EPA has given us kind of a little escape hatch. And that escape hatch is called the exceptional events rule. And what that allows is for us to take our monitoring data at all these locations and say, that day was impacted by prescribed fire or another sort of event that is outside of the control of the department. And so we can put together what is called an exceptional events demonstration, and we submit that to EPA. So say, it's that time of year here in Tallahassee, so we're out there burning down in the Apalachicola National Forest, got a strong southerly wind, the smoke plume comes straight across Tallahassee, our monitors go up, and we end up with, say, a daily concentration of 35 micrograms per meter cubed. And we can pull out the weather data and show the smoke plume coming from a 5,000 acre burn in the National Forest right up to Tallahassee. Maybe we can collect some visible satellite data where you can see the smoke plume hit, you can see it going northeast towards Tallahassee to really create that, kind of proving it up that we were impacted by smoke from this fire. And if we can prove that up, the bottom line is that we will be able to take that 35 micrograms for that daily average and remove it from the calculation of how we get to the annual concentration of 9 micrograms per meter cubed. Now, this process, as it's played out in the past, has been a really, really high barrier bureaucratically from EPA. EPA doesn't just say, oh, we think you proved this up enough. They want a lot of evidence to prove this up. And we have been begging them to kind of wheel back a little bit the amount of work that's needed, because as you might surmise, an annual average, removing 135 microgram per meter day has a really, really small effect on the resulting annual average. If I just remove, in a 3-year period, there's 1,095 days. If I remove one of those days, it has a very small impact on the average. So we're going to have to go out and find a lot of these days and start doing them. And so each one of those days will be an exceptional event demonstration. And we have to do that over and over and over and over. And if EPA is being as restrictive on how they give these out as they have been on the past, they're just going to get completely kind of paralyzed under all of these requests from states who are trying to preserve prescribed burning and trying to not be impacted by other events like Canadian wildfires, Saharan dust, and whatnot. Fireworks is another great example of where we see high PM values, so that we can have a representative air quality data that represents what our air quality would look like. The idea here is that the fire return interval for these areas in Florida is high, so a natural fire recurrence is part of the natural ecosystem. So it's okay to remove that data. It is part of the natural cycle. So we are now kind of, white knuckling this, right? Because we are close. For right now, we are over, and I'll just, without getting too much into the details, EPA is doing these data corrections, and we are cautiously optimistic. That's my buzzword for most people, that these high numbers, these two 9.7s in Broward and Escambia County, are going to be lowered by about 10%. So we're cautiously optimistic that once these data corrections are completed, and we won't know until June, that these numbers and all of our monitors statewide will meet that 9 micrograms per meter cubed annual average. But that doesn't mean that the job is over, right? It only takes 1 year, one bad year, for us to be kind of back in the, kind of crucible of having to be very, very concerned about our data. So I'll tell you what we are doing with our data. And I have Tammy Egan here, who is our air quality data expert. And what we have done is we've created like an action threshold where if the daily numbers that we get are over 15 micrograms per meter cubed, we are going out and gathering a bunch of data that is very temporally limited. If I said, Tammy, what happened a year ago? Can you get some satellite images? All those have been lost to the internet, the memory hole, and are gone. But if we can react quickly and say, yesterday we had a 20 microgram per meter cube day, quick, go out, get the Florida Forest Service data, get the satellite data, and let's save it. Hopefully we'll never have to use it. But if we do have to use it, we've collected that data and we can begin the process of putting together an exceptional event demonstration to EPA. So we are actively doing that. And one of our challenges is we are seeing a lot of days this time of year where we're going over 15 in Tallahassee, in Pensacola, and in other places where prescribed fire is impacting. And especially these larger burns, the greater than 1,000-acre burns, EPA is going to start requiring additional procedural things to help the public understand that, number one, we are all fans of prescribed burning. And I know our friends with the Florida Forest Service always like to remind everybody that we are the #1 state for burning. When people complain to the department about air quality, oftentimes we have a lot of people moving to Florida who are not familiar with prescribed burning, and try to remind them that a lot of states want to be like Florida in having as much prescribed burning as we have, but they have so many kind of other environmental issues that they are kind of limited in what they can do on this front. So just reminding people, and then also when you're having a big burn and you expect smoke impacts, that you are communicating to the public. We are doing a 5,000-acre burn in Apalachicola. Wind is from the south. You could be impacting communities in Tallahassee and Gadsden County, or into Jackson County, or wherever it might be. We don't have monitors everywhere, as you can see from this map, but that doesn't mean people aren't being impacted by smoke. In the more rural communities, you expect more familiarity with being living in a smoke impacted community. But EPA is going to want in these exceptional event demonstrations for public notification of potential smoke impacts and what you are supposed to do if you are a member of a sensitive group, elderly, pre-existing conditions, young, whatever it might be, that you are given basically the high level overview of what you should do if you're being impacted by smoke to protect your public health. And so we need to work together as in the burning community and with Florida DEP to try to meet these requirements from EPA so that once we have impacts from smoke that are on our monitors and we feel like we need to exclude that data for some reason, that we don't get stuck, right? We go, it was from a prescribed fire. They say, yes, it was. Here's all the satellite data showing you the fire was here, the smoke went here, right to our monitor. Yep. And then they go, but did you tweet about it? No, we didn't tweet about it. Okay, well then we can't issue this scrubbing of the data over one small procedural hurdle, right? So I see our friends from the National Weather Service here. He calls himself a force multiplier. I agree with that. And, we are interested in ways of getting the message out about especially bigger burns that we know might have an impact on air quality. Just last week, I drove back from Orlando. I was driving the I-10 stretch in Madison County, and I think there must have been like a 4,000 or 5,000 acre burn in Wakulla, and I was driving that stretch, and it was real smoky just last week. That would have been Tuesday of last week, And if we had a monitor there, it would have shown elevated readings, and we might want to scrub that data if it was regulatorily significant. And the challenge is we don't know what is regulatory significant for a period of 3 years. So we really need to do the work up front. So I'm going to continue working with our friends in the Florida Forest Service to try to make sure that we are communicating. But I see stories getting out there, people talking about there's a 1,000-acre burn planned in Apalachicola. How are people finding out about that? Who are you guys telling? How is that communication being sent out to the public so that they're aware? I don't think there's some mandated way from EPA to communicate. It's just that we need to make an effort to communicate. And part of that communication is the educational outreach part that so many people in this group are really for, right? We want to be telling people why prescribed fire is good. What are the values of it? Why is it important? And we need to follow up with that with, yes, there can be air quality impacts, but this is like wildfire insurance. If we don't burn, it'll be a wildfire. The air quality impacts will be worse. So you need to kind of package all that together, importantly, with the public health message of if you see or smell smoke and you're a member of a sensitive group, these are the reasonable things you can do. Close your windows, close your doors, turn your air conditioning on your car to recirculate, right? All those kind of things that are really simple, but we're looking for just for that kind of minimum amount of public communication so that we can point to that and say that 5,000 acre burn, they communicated it. It went to the National Weather Service. That maybe got circulated to news communities that are in the area. Maybe they pick up the story. And we can try to make sure that we don't get dinged where it's a prescribed fire. Everybody agrees it's a prescribed fire, but nobody talked about communication on that front. So, it's an ongoing process that we are working through to try to figure this out. And we value your input on these things. One of the things that I would point out, I'm going to try to boldly here. Do you know where can I share the screen? I'm sure you guys are aware. Yes, I would love to have the browser.
Should just pull right back.
Yeah. Did anybody have any questions about the map before I kind of pull it down about the concentrations around the state? Yes, sir.
So were you saying that they were out in attainment in Broward and Gambia but called it prescribed fire?
That's a great question, sir. So what we use with this data is called the attainment, non-attainment designations process. That is a legal Clean Air Act process that takes a period of years. The rule just came out. Florida, and this is important because if you ask our Florida DEP comms team, they will remind you every time if you ask about air quality. Florida is the most populous state to meet all of the national ambient air quality standards. And until EPA designates an area non-attainment, which, like I said, we're cautiously optimistic that these numbers, these 9.7s, will come down when they do this data correction. That as EPA goes through this initial designations process, that Florida will remain the largest state by population to meet all the national air quality standards. But so technically, if somebody out there asks you guys, oh, well, do we have non-attainment areas now because of prescribed fire? The answer is no, we do not have non-attainment areas until there is a federal rulemaking that is completed to designate those areas as non-attainment. Great question, thank you.
But you're saying that that one's not because of prescribed fire smoke?
Okay, so that's another great question. The Pensacola monitor is probably more impacted by prescribed fire than the Broward County monitor. The Broward County monitor is about 10 feet, 20 feet from the side of I-95 in Broward County. So it is what we call a near road monitor. And, you know, it's very near to the road, right? So, but that, you know, the Pensacola monitor is not a near road monitor, and PM is made up of a lot of things, right? We have some very special speciation monitors at a handful of locations around the state. And what that shows is that about a quarter of the PM is sulfates, and that's produced through chemistry happening in the air. A quarter is like organic material. Tammy, stop me if I go wrong anywhere. There's a smaller fraction of nitrates and other crustal material like dust and things like that. But basically there's sea salts, that's another one. There's all these different things that create particulate matter that we're breathing in, and they all kind of all add up. But what we do know is that when we see concentrations going up really sharply, there is a specific cause for that. And those specific causes are often fireworks. It's the 4th or 5th of July, it's January 1st, and you just know these monitors go up and you know that's fireworks. And then it's this time of year, February, March, April, in the northern part of Florida. You see its concentrations are low, 555, you know, kind of just our general background, and then it shoots up to 20. Well, that's not a plume of sulfates going towards us. That's likely to be a discrete event that has caused that, and we're tracking that. And Tammy, would you say at this point so far that we've been tracking this almost all of our events, besides maybe one, there was a fire of a building that impacted one of our monitor, but besides that, it's almost all exclusively prescribed by fire events that are driving these days where we go up well above our baseline. Since February, since we've been doing this, yeah. So one of the things, yeah, awesome, that I want to show you guys that you may or may not be aware of is and I'll just do it. Am I ready to Google?
Go for it.
Fire and smoke map.
Go for it.
Yeah, let's see if you could enter the fire and smoke map. Yeah, it'll all work. It's not a link, it'll come up.
Oh, okay.
Just fire and smoke map. There you go. Yep. There you go, right there. Okay, so this is something that we worked with EPA. So what you see here is a map. Hopefully it won't do what John was showing me and not work. Do we have to go around the globe, John?
No, it's just
okay. Okay, so what this is this combines our regulatory data, you know, those monitors that you've seen around the state, and it adds these citizen science monitors. Mostly these are called purple airs. They're cheap air quality monitors that you can buy and put at your house. If you're interested about air quality, you can buy one of these things. They're about $200, and you can go and put one at your house. And what we're seeing is a lot of people buying these and putting them out there. So they are not very accurate. Right, but they are good at showing you red, yellow, green, right? If all you want is an order of magnitude, they are pretty good. And so what you see here are the circles. The circles are our regulatory monitors, and the squares are the purple airs. So I'm just going to zoom in. Here's Pensacola. We talked about, this is our monitor called the Ellison monitor. This is the one over 9.7. And all these little squares, Escambia County bought 12 purple airs and distributed them around their county because they wanted to have more information, not just the one monitor at our Ellison monitor, but to see what's going on as smoke is happening. And as you can see, they might not be accurate if you're making it for regulatory purposes, but they are in agreement right now, right? It's saying the air quality is good, and the purple layers are in agreement. There was an event about a week and a half ago where we had really high levels of data in Pensacola, and the monitor was yellow or orange, and so were the purple layers. So they're kind of tracking together. Florida, though, we don't have that many, and there's a really good reason for that, and it's a good reason, is that when you live in a place that has great air quality, you really don't think about it, and that is a good thing to have. If you live in California, you think about air quality a lot. If you live in Utah, you think about air quality a lot. I'm going to show you what that looks like on this map. Look at all of these monitors. All these people have gone out and bought air quality monitors because of these huge wildfire events. And they're all reading green right now, right? They're all consistent with each other. Maybe we can find one that's malfunctioning somewhere deep in here, you know. Sometimes you see one that's maybe somebody's barbecuing outside their house or whatever, right? But as you can see, it's the wisdom of the crowd. It's not one monitor that we're worried about. It's, you know, the kind of the fleet of monitors. So, you know, could this happen in Florida where we're going to get more of these? I mean, I think that it will happen, especially as more events happen where people start thinking about air quality. Like here's one, right? Like just, oh, one little monitor, kind of off on its own. Yeah, this is live. This is a live feed of air quality, and John Sadler showed me something pretty cool, which is we have some wildfires going on right now in Virginia, and they've updated this map to add some data information here. So you can actually click on this smoke outlook. This is a forecast for smoke impacts because of the wildfires in Virginia right now and Maryland. And so here are all the wildfires, and we have an ARA out there. And I'll see what happens if I click this boldly. And, you know, so here's the smoke outlook from the ARA. So here's John Pendergast is assigned. And, you know, he's out here telling you when you might be impacted by smoke. So if you're someone in the, you know, metropolitan DC area and they think smoke is coming your way, they can tell you, hey, smoke is on the way. You know, if you are planning on running a marathon this afternoon, today might not be the day to do that. If you're sensitive, you know, you should make sure that your house is sealed properly, close your doors, close your windows. It's probably a beautiful day up there right now, right? And in comes a smoke plume, right? So you want to let people know what they can do to protect their public health. So these are the things that are out there. You guys can, this is just, there's a mobile app through Air Now, but you can just type in fire and smoke map on your mobile browser and this will come up. And if you're wondering, hey, you know, we did a big fire somewhere in Florida. Has this impacted any monitors? You know, you can pull it up and see what's going on. Obviously, the density of the purple air monitors in Florida is nowhere near as high as other places. And I attribute that to, if you live in Florida, you probably don't think about air quality that much because it's generally very, very good, which is nice. Sorry, what's the question? So there is not an archive of this data. You can pull our regulatory data for archives, but the purple air data, we don't. That's one of the things that's why we're going out when we get these high events and grabbing that data right away so that we can have a screenshot of the purple airs from that day to say, hey, what's that? Click on one. Okay, thank you, John. It's great advice. Okay, sure. Let's see. Who's got a purple air in Tallahassee? Tammy, which one did you just recently set up? Is that downtown one right there? I picked the one on the right. I can't listen to basic instructions. Okay, so where? History. Thank you. Yes. So yes, there's a short amount of time, but the map function of the whole map is not available. But yeah, so let's see. Anything going on March 21st? That was a week ago. I think that was when I was coming back. We burning 5,000 acres down in Apalachicola or the Appalachian National Forest. Right, so here's the maximum one hour. Tammy, 1 hour? Yeah, it does average. So that got up to an AQI of 129. So just as a reminder, this is important for the folks here to know. One of the things that we're finding is that air quality data is now not something you need to go search for. And this is important. On my Apple phone, run by Google through these maps, if you just pull up your Apple Maps, so here I am at the little theater of Tallahassee, right in the corner of my map, it tells me what the AQI is. So it's like right there. If I just open up my map function, AQI is in the corner. If it's yellow or orange, you'll notice it. If you go to the weather and you go to your weather app, so what's the weather in Tallahassee? It's going to rain here in a little bit. The air quality is good because of that. But if the air quality were bad, say I looked at my weather at this time, it promotes it. So it would be at the top of my weather app, right? It would say Tallahassee, 73 degrees, air quality, unhealthy for sensitive groups. If you're sensitive, take cover. Something like that. Sure. So this data is getting pushed out more and more. And of course, as you can imagine, that leaves the public often confused. What does this mean? What is AQI? What are all these things? How do I understand this? And we get a lot of questions. But I think for this community, it's just important to know that these things exist and that you can look at these things yourself and see, hey, we did a big fire. Did we have any smoke impacts and things like that? And the one thing that we really want to work on is, especially for larger fires, that some burners do communicate directly with us where they let us know, hey, we're doing a 5,000 acre fire today. This could impact your monitors. Just things like that are very, very helpful. We haven't finalized any sort of, regulatory process for this because we're really not involved. That's the Florida Forest Service's business. We don't have any regulatory authority over prescribed burns. But there's a huge regulatory impact to being non-attainment, a huge regulatory impact, decades of work if you're in non-attainment. So we really want to do the best to avoid that. Any other questions? Okay, online, we'll go there.
So I'm reading this straight. And it says, is there a rolling set of monthly baseline historical data for Florida to give some indication of what humans evolved with, such that they can be used as a standard reduction number to the overall number?
So right now we are collecting monthly averages just to give us an idea of the seasonality of events, right? And I'm suspecting that this time of year we see an increase in more wooded areas and that we'll see a decrease. Maybe there'll be a Saharan dust event. That's the kind of thing that happens during the summer. Tammy, anything you would add to my answer? We are tracking the monthly data. The regulatory averages are either a daily or an annual. So it's not really regulatorily important, that is, but we are tracking so that if one monitor is having a bad January and a bad February, that we are now starting to think, oh goodness, we need to really pay attention to this monitor. And as smoke is impacting it, really focusing on making sure that we have the data that might be needed to help use that escape hatch that EPA has provided. Tammy?
Yeah, I think my interpretive question is like, if you assume that there's always been fire in Florida, in the past, at some point, we didn't have zero parts per million, right?
Of course.
I think it's very good.
Yeah.
But I think he's trying to get the fact that there was always smoke in our area.
Right. Yeah. No, that's a great question. I think the long answer of that is that that's such a broad brush that EPA does not feel comfortable saying, really representative air quality in North Florida is if you just exclude February and March. So turn off all your monitors, or we don't collect it for regulatory purposes. While some people might think that's a great idea, and we've heard people, you and I have heard people suggest that, EPA is not going to buy that, and they're going to really micromanage the situation. Hopefully, where our air quality remains good enough that we don't have to have significant changes to what's going on. but it's possible. And, just being aware of this is important. There was another question. Yes, sir.
Yes, Florida has burned for the last 10 million years, I think it is, on a routine basis. So we've always had smoke in the state of Florida. And so air quality maybe has always been a problem, or at least there has been a certain amount of particulate matter in the atmosphere in Florida. But now we've got tens of millions of vehicles running up and down Interstate 75 and Interstate 95 and Interstate 10 and Interstate 40, all in Pensacola and Tallahassee and Jacksonville. So the increase in particulate matter may very well be due to all of this vehicular traffic. So I've heard a lot of discussion about prescribed burning, but I haven't heard any discussion about the traffic.
Okay, that's a great question. So, right, okay, I'll try to be quick. I know John is itching to get up here. So the short story, excuse me, is that we regulate all sources of air pollution broadly, but the Florida Department of Environmental Protection focuses on stationary sources. EPA regulates mobile sources. So there's new motor vehicle standards that reduce the amount of air pollution that come from vehicles. And all these things work together to kind of minimize that. Florida's air quality has improved significantly over the last 20 or 30 years, to the point where, it really, those sources have come down by 80, 90% of where they used to be. And when I go visit areas of the state that used to have significant air quality issues, you see old pictures of old power plants emitting uncontrolled. And now all of our power plants are either firing gas or are very well controlled. The cars are emitting significantly less. And so everybody's coming down. But it is a very fair point that this is one of these difficult situations where everybody has a piece of the pie. And I'm not picking on the prescribed fire community for sure. I want to be very clear about that. In fact, EPA has blessed the prescribed fire community with this escape hatch. There is no such thing for power plants, mobile sources, and other sources of air pollution. If somewhere is above the standard because of those things, EPA is going to make it a non-attainment area. Whereas if we're above the standard somewhere and we can say, here are these 15 days that were impacted by prescribed fire, we want to exclude those, and that makes the difference, I think EPA will say, okay, great, because we understand the value of prescribed fire, even if they might make the process a little bit more difficult than we hope, but we're at the beginning of it. So we're hoping for a good conversation with EPA on that front. One time for one more.
One more. You mentioned 1,000-acre threshold, and so I work for National Forest in Florida. Apalachicola has an average burn size of 2,500 acres per burn, and I don't know if there's any Florida Forest Service people in here listening or not, but I'm thinking, like, if I'm going to play my cards right, I'd rather do one 15,000-acre burn on one day than 6 2,500-acre burns on 6 days where, if I hit that one day with the best wind conditions, I'm not blowing it to Tallahassee. That's ideal. But what's this 1,000-acre threshold anyway?
Well, there really isn't. 1,000 acres is just kind of our rough, if we had to draw a line somewhere, thinking about when we would want to know, because we can't do every pile burner that shows up and says, I have 5 piles. If we needed them to have a comms plan, that wouldn't work, right? Every small landowner who wants to burn 30, 40 acres or whatever, that might not make sense because we don't expect those impacts to have as wide of an impact as, say, a 5,000-acre burn and things like that. So it's my understanding that a lot of federal agencies already have comms plans built into everything that they're doing. So really, there's kind of different communities within subcommunities within this that thinking about how to do the communications. And that's why I wanted to, make sure that we're talking with our friends from the NWS who, work with news communities, work with counties to help communicate these things. So Leon County gets an alert. Hey, we're doing a 5,000-acre burn, and Leon County's aware, and they can do whatever they need to do at their public health level, or the news industry in Tallahassee can tweet out a link and say, the National Weather Service often says, today's a beautiful day. Expect some fires, because it's the perfect day to burn also, right? Which is a really great way of getting ahead of it, right? So that's a great question. There is no regulatory threshold on that. I'm just trying to think about We don't want to micromanage the entire process, but just thinking about the biggest ones at first. And it'll just be a learning process, really. But our thing is, we want to be able to look at the data and pinpoint it to something and say, there was a 2,500 acre fire, or there was a whatever it was, and that was the cause of that. That's the type of causality connection that we need to prove these things up with EPA. All right, come on down, John.
Thank you. Yeah.